We are at Hardesty's, and what a privilege it is today. Of course, Hardesty's, where you're going to find great food, but the people are even better. And I'm privileged to be able to sit with our new city commissioner, Yannah Frazier. Yannah, thank you, first of all, for your volunteer service with our city.
Oh, thanks for having me today.
What a great thing. We got to reconnect a little bit. We know some of the same people, and also we used to do commercials like 30 years ago, didn't we?
Yes, it was 20 something.
I give it up to that. I was most impressed, Yannah, with your kind of speech, but it was more of an introduction to the city commissioners just last Monday, last Monday. And what impressed me the most was how you finished it. Was you said, I would just be glad to be part of the team. And so you looked at this council or this commission as kind of a team membership. Could you explain that?
Sure, I've been watching the council meetings the past few months. I'd attended, and everybody wants a seat at the table, I like to think. That's where all the business happens, is at the table. And if that table is open to have me, hey, I'm there.
That's a wonderful attitude to have, because it really is a team. And it doesn't mean that all the team members are going to like each other, but it has to be towards one goal. What would the goals be, Yannah, that you would suggest from your heart, in your experience with 25 years in Ward 3, what would be some of your goals as you step onto the commission? And it doesn't have to be necessarily, I want to fix this, or I want to do that, or let's continue this. It might be just understanding your team a little bit better. What do you feel would be team goals that could happen over the next few months with you as a commissioner?
Oh, business is key. Business is key. We want business to come back to Main Street. I grew up down Main Street, and I remember everything. It was a place for the family to join together, have meals, celebrate holidays, shop, and I would love to see downtown come back a little bit. It's a happening place to be. There's so much history downtown.
There really is. And you know, that's one of the reasons why I chose Hardesty's, is because sometimes we get less familiar with ward boundaries. And Hardesty's is actually a part of Ward 3 on the south side of Benedict Street. And your ward stretches all the way now down past the river, and then even all the way around the Farrell Loop to the other side of Main Street over to Highland. And what's important about that now is for each of us to understand that at election time, they're going to be voting specifically for the Ward 3 representative, which would be your representation now. And so we really do have to get familiar with what's in our ward. And downtown really is the heart of Ward 3, up and down Main Street. What kind of changes could occur down there, do you think, Yannah? And we'll talk about your family in a minute, but as a mother, as an adult, as a council member with your tribes, what types of changes would you like to see down Main Street?
I'd like to see more business. I'd like to see more events. I love the community events that they have, whether it's the dinners, whether it's the shopping days, whether it's the carnivals and parades. It's always been downtown forever, and I would like to keep it that way.
When you mentioned, and if you would like to see what Yannah shared about herself at the City Commission meeting, go to 3 hours and 8 minutes in the YouTube playback. You just scrub to 3 hours and 8 minutes, and you'll actually hear her presentation of where she comes from our community. You've been in the ward for over 25 years, and so you've experienced a lot of things downtown. One of the things I love too is you talked all about your kids. You have 3 kids, 2 at OSU, 1 a junior over at the high school. Talk a little bit about what you did as a mother to stay close to your kids.
Man, I did so much. I had my children from beginning to end in Ward 3, and we loved to ride around in our strollers. I had a bicycle with one of those little trailers that I would sometimes put 1 or 2 of my girls in, and we would scoot around downtown, whether it's to go swim downtown, or we would sometimes go to the museum, and I love that museum. There's so much history in it. We're able to go through that museum, and you can look in old phone books And you can find, well, we found our great grandma, my kid's great great grandmother, and it shows, back then it showed what they did for a living and the address, and sometimes it had a short phone number, BR, da da, and it showed her as a housekeeper. And oh, you can also see the little maps with the trains, and it shows all of the old neighborhoods, and you can see where exactly what was in my house before I was there, and it shows the history. It's like everything was right there, centered around those railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And when I first moved into that neighborhood, I couldn't stand the railroad. I would hear it every night, and I think today I'm trained to wake up in the middle of the night when that train goes through. But I love it today. It's part of everything. It's why Shawnee was here. I think everything followed that railroad track and the factories, and everything was downtown.
Well, and we're talking, of course, about the Santa Fe Museum, and there's a lot going on down there. They do a wonderful job with the Pottawatomie County Historical Society, and we suggest that you visit Ward 3 and the Santa Fe Depot. Let's talk a little bit now about your work history, Yannah. You've had a varied work history as you've worked up through with your children. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, goodness. I had little odd jobs here and there until I started having my kids. And when I had my kids, I became sort of a stalker mom. I started following them. They needed socialization. So I put them in Mom's Day Out at St. Paul's, and I followed them and I worked there. And I peeked at them through the windows, even because they needed socialization away from Mom just for a minute. And after that, we went to Head Start, where I volunteered a lot. I read stories at least weekly and did anything they were going to do, whether it was go to the park and play or anything. I joined them at Head Start. And then it came time for grade school. And our neighborhood grade school, Horseman, I joined them as Indian Ed and as an advisor, and I worked there while they were in grade school. Then when it came time for them to go to middle school, I continued to follow. And I followed them through the middle school, and that's about where I stopped. I stayed there for a while. And I left the schools just for like a year, and I worked for my tribe during the times of COVID. And afterwards, a position came open for the attendance clerk at the middle school, and I went back, and there I am today. And it is just a gas. Every day is different. It's completely different. And the parents are great, and the kids are great, and the staff is great. It's a team, and I love that.
And you mentioned, you just glossed over your tribe, but you also hold a significant position with the Sac and Fox tribe. Is that correct?
I am on the Housing Commission for the Sac and Fox Nation. I started out my service with them in the Education Department, where I chaired that for a number of years. And then I joined the Housing Commission. I've always been in our Ladies Auxiliary, which is for descendants of veterans. And what else?
Now you're the treasurer, is
that
correct?
I'm the treasurer now. I was chair for 3 or 4 years, and now I'm the treasurer now, and I just got my second term. And our meetings happen to be the same night of our city meetings, but they've been gracious enough to allow me to leave early to attend these city meetings.
And when you talk about attending the city meetings, and I'm going to come back to the tribal meetings for a minute, but you have been attending the city meetings regularly, and then also some of your ward meetings as well. What have you learned over the last year or so that you've really begun to plug in to the ward and to your city government? What have you learned, or what are some things that you would just like to talk about that may have come up over the last couple of years in learning?
It would be amiss of me to not mention the homeless downtown. We have always had homeless, yes. I feel the numbers are larger than they were before, and the solution isn't clear cut. But it's a work in progress, and it's going to take time. We can't necessarily force people into housing because some people just don't want to be in housing. I wish I knew an answer, but it's going to be a process. It's not going to be just a simple cut and dry thing.
And
it's a change, yeah.
And you have worked now in public housing with your tribe and in that area for close to 5 years.
Yes.
Do you think that experience helps you in any way to be able to perform as Ward 3 commissioner?
I think so. You can't control what people do and how they live and what they're going to do. The best you can do is deal with the repercussions and learn from it. You learn from it and carry on and wait for the next move. I don't know what to say. I wish it's such a difficult topic, and I wish there was a simple, quick solution, but there's not.
Yeah, and what I appreciate about that is just your humility to be able to say there's a lot that has to continue to be learned about going through that. That's what I've been experiencing over the last, literally, I mean, it's been 10 years since we've been talking about the homeless and talking about the problems that we've had, and it has become more concentric. It seems we've been able to do some management around, and it's now come down into your ward, which I would say most people in our community would say our number one difficulty right now would be the homeless situation downtown. I don't know if that would be accurate in my opinion. I think that it is the most visible problem that we have right now. But also, I think a Ward 3 difficulty that we're having is transportation. We have many without what most would say would be reliable transportation to be able to reach the north side of town where many of our higher paying jobs are and would help families in any demographic, but especially economically in Ward 3. I would think if we had better or some sort of transportation solution from Ward 3 to where the industry is, with 300 new jobs opening up in the next 2 years with a new George Fisher plant. There's a lot of good I think could happen with transportation. Would you agree that that's a problem? And do you have any ideas about addressing transportation for Ward 3 residents?
Oh, absolutely. Transportation would solve a lot. We don't really have anything. Decades ago, we had a bus line here in this town. Wouldn't that be great today to have?
Yeah, it would be.
I still got a little bus token. It's the Shawnee bus lines. Yes. That would be a great thing, or more service. Having shelter is key, too, now at this time.
Yeah.
And it is moving north. It's throughout the city. You may not see it, but it's there.
Well, our number one employer is just south of Ward 3 with the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, of course. So there are job opportunities, but they're just a little bit different. And I think whether you're heading south or you're heading north, transportation and helping to solve that problem for those who would like to work in those more fuller paying jobs would be a great thing for the ward.
It would be.
It's just a suggestion.
Yes.
Another thing that you might have expertise in is, I think, also affordable housing is another huge issue. And we have, right now, we're sitting at above 60%, or at least in the last census, we were above 60% in rentals as opposed to home ownership. Whereas the national average, as I understand, was 63% home ownership in communities like ours. And I could be off a little bit on that, but it seems like we have to help more homeowners occur down in Ward 3, which I think would help a lot. Do you have any input on that and the difficulties with home ownership around that area?
Oh, I went through the housing authority to become a homeowner myself. I don't know if I would have been able to become a homeowner as early as I did without tribal housing. You just have to walk the line. If you are in a housing program, you have to maintain a certain dollar figure on what you earn. There's a minimum that you have to make a lot of the times to be in housing programs here that people don't realize. They think that, oh, you're homeless, you can just go to housing and get put in a home. But no, there's requirements. You have to also have a clean criminal record a lot of the times, and there's a waiting list. There's a huge waiting list for a lot of these housing authorities going on right now. And with the tornado that came through, that took out a lot of our rental units that we had before that we don't have today because they're still getting repaired. That was that tornado.
It ripped right through your ward.
Yes, it did. Oh, it ripped through this whole town, including our tribal housing communities. It took a lot, and the damage still isn't completely recovered. I mean, there were so many obstacles between insurance and finding contractors and finding the building materials, and it was just a lot. It was a lot here, but we're making our way back. We are. It's not completely recovered and repaired, but a lot of our homes are now. That was, I don't know, like I said, tribal housing was my key to become a homeowner, but there's also other programs with realtors, especially with indigenous people. We're able to apply for different loans, and veterans, there's always a little category.
Yeah. And so I don't think that we'll solve that problem, but you touched on something. As a young mother, you decided you wanted to be a homeowner rather than a renter. How would you say that impacted yourself and your psyche, but then also your children as they grew up, as opposed a homeowner or being in that process as opposed to a renter? Do you think that there's a difference in how you feel and how you operate as an entire family unit in your living spaces?
There was for me. I felt so much more invested in the home. Once I knew I was paying on that home and that's where my roots were going to be and where I was going to be to raise my kids, it gave me much more inclination to work more in my home and in my neighborhood and get to know my neighbors and just be more involved with everything, whether it be the neighbors and the families. And I love working in my neighborhood even. It's where it's at, downtown.
Well, in listening to your interview, again, the number one thing, the last thing you said was being part of the team. Another thing that you said, though, early was that you were Sac and Fox and you were absentee Shawnee, which both were here before the state of Oklahoma even existed. How or what do you think your indigenous roots do to enable you to serve and volunteer our community in a more positive way? Do you have ideas on how we all might work together and make all of us stronger through the four tribes in the fifth nation, the US of A? I call us the City of Five Nations. How working together could help us or empower us even more to move better into the future?
Well, we just simply have to work together. You had mentioned boundaries earlier with the Ward 3, and I always grew up knowing exactly where our tribal boundaries were. Say, for instance, on this side of Kickapoo Street, it's the Kickapoo tribe. And then on that side is the Sac and Fox Nation. You go all the way to the river, and across that river, and it's the Potawatomi Nation. I always made it my goal to stay within my tribal boundaries, not only because of the services that they offer, but just because it feels like home. I feel comfortable when I'm pulling in on the highway and I see entering Sac and Fox Nation Reservation. It's coming home. And
what that touches to me is that's how I feel about coming into Shawnee as a whole. And what you're mentioning that when you have a home, you know what that feels like. It's kind of like home ownership.
Sure.
In the sense of when you step into your house, you know that it's
you have
yours.
That comfort in being in your own
And so do
area.
you see any ways in which we might be able to bring all of those different sources of home? Because we have 4 of them, actually 5 of them, and I live in a privileged world. I encompass all of it. So when I come into Shawnee, I feel like the whole thing, is home.
Sure.
Can we get there with Can we get there maybe a little bit better, working together with the indigenous nations that are centered right here, when we know that there are 4 with the Potawatomi, Citizen Potawatomi Nation, the Absentee Shawnee Nation, the Kickapoo Nation, and the Sac and Fox Nation, along with the US of A?
I feel like so. I feel the city of Shawnee would benefit. We've just got to give everybody a seat at the table. That's it.
And we just now seated another volunteer who's part of two of those, right?
Yeah.
Absentee Shawnee and the Second Fox Nation.
Yes.
And so that's a good step in the right direction.
Yes. Our tribe has been known for having women leaders. We had chiefs back in the 70s, and you go to our council meetings. They can get a little loud, but what's amazing about it is you have women all over. I think there's more women than men, and they are far more outspoken, and they're not afraid to speak their truth. And that's what I love about that council meeting, is that everyone has a voice. Everyone has that stage. They just got to get up there and say something, and have their moment to speak. And I love that. I just love that about our tribe.
Well, as a bystander to the city commission meetings, I want to encourage you to encourage your ladies who speak at your council meetings to come to the city commission meetings and speak with you and feel like that everybody has a voice. Because I think that's something that we miss, is that we all really do have a voice, and we don't have to always show up at the council meetings, but I think that we have to encourage one another. Especially the leaders who volunteer their time and service, as Yannah has, in order to serve on the city commission. What would you feel, Yannah, is most important, because you have just a very small slice of time? If there's anything that you could accomplish just in 6 months, and who knows what will happen if you'll decide to run and be elected as the ward official for the next 4 years, but maybe not. You might not decide that. What would be your goal here for the next 6 months for Yannah Frazier when she's sitting on the city commission? For 6 months, Yannah, that goes like that.
It does. Well, I hope to keep the machine moving, and I intend to be there. I'm going to show up for every meeting and do what I can. I just hope to be an asset to the city of Shawnee. I just hope to do what I can to be helpful and leave a positive mark behind me.
Well, I believe that you will. Blessed are the meek and humble in spirit, and you are certainly powerful, humble, and I am just privileged to get to know you, Yannah. Thank you very much for stepping up into a volunteer position, a very hard volunteer position of city commission, and invite people, if you would, your best invitation to be able to reach out to you if they have comments or questions, or if they just want to encourage you with some of the great things that you're about to do as a city commissioner.
Oh, feel free to reach out to me. I can be reached by email, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
I got a new
We'll
city
put it
email.
up there for you. Yeah,
Yeah, I got a City of Shawnee email. Feel free to email me, reach out. I'm here all the time. I'm easily found.
And there is sometimes a concern by commissioners that by citizens that they reach out to the commissioners and they don't respond. How responsive are you if somebody's emailing you?
Oh man, it's funny. By the time I came home from that city meeting where I was appointed commissioner, I came home to at least a dozen Facebook friend requests. Yeah. It was wild. And it's great. It's exciting. It's neat. It's neat to have a lot of people wanting to get to know you. And I accept every one of them. It may not be the best idea, but I'm open. My door is always open for anybody.
Do you plan to make yourself visible within the ward in any ways? Is there any ways that we might discuss that?
Oh, I'm visible all the time anyway, from my job, where I greet everyone that comes in the front door of the middle school, to these neighborhood watch meetings, I try to go to everything, a lot in this community when I can.
Excellent. Well, if there's any way in which we as Shawnee CTV can help you facilitate your volunteer service any better, please just let us know, because we're on board to try to help, so that your voice is as impactful as it is important now for everybody in our community.
Sure.
Thank you very much for being with us, Yannah.
Thank you.
And that's what happens when you talk to people. Yannah and I have never really held a conversation like this. But very quickly you become comfortable when people have the same vision, which is a better community for all.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. I'll shake your hand. That's what I do.
Yes.